Hi, everybody. To those who do not know me, I am David Basson. Many of my childhood friends know me as Khedher. I was born in Baghdad in 1949, finished my schooling in 1966, and graduated from the University of Baghdad in 1970. I left Iraq by passport in January 1972 to England, where I did my postgraduate studies. In 1995, I emigrated to Israel. Over the last 18 months, I have been collecting testimonies and stories of the exit from Iraq from members of the Jewish community that remained in Iraq after the 1950-1951 mass emigration to Israel. I have been concentrating on the period from the mid-60s and early 70s. The aim is to publish a book with the title A New Hope, which will be sponsored by the Aguda, whose aim is to promote literary works, memoirs, and research by and about the Jews of Iraq via books, seminars, and conferences. To date, we published 70 books. In collecting the written stories and talking for dozens of hours with people, my aim is to tell the heroic attempts of those who sought freedom from oppression. Of course, and inevitably, all the stories have their own personal angle, particularly when resurrecting memories that were buried for half a century, whether in recording dates, describing specific events and people, and finally their interpretation of what they saw or heard from parents and friends. You will find stories that range from chaotic attempts to escape by contacting Kurdish contacts to a very well-organized process, from almost cost-free to having to pay significant amount of money, from crossing the Iraqi-Iranian borders in cars and within hours of getting to North Iraq, to taking days traveling on mules or donkeys and walking in snow. You may find anger because of certain incidents, such as not giving routes of escape to others, threads and chains that were cut prematurely, as well as external elements that influence the efficiency of the escape process. I'm not sitting here as a judge, but one has to remember what an awful period we lived in those years, the fear that everyone had of being personally or one of his family members being the next victim, whether being imprisoned, tortured, or even killed, dominated our thinking. My role as a researcher is to unravel the chain of events and discover the threads as objectively as one can be, plug any holes and chronological mistakes or missynchronization in these stories, and give an overall view. My work can only be successful with the cooperation of those who escaped or were involved in the process in providing me with all the information that they can remember about themselves, families, and friends who were with them in their escape journeys or whom they helped. I ask hence everyone who was involved to write to me or call me. We still really do not know the exact number of those who escaped. It ranges between 1,500 and 2,000, and that is a guess from a community of around 3,000. I thank everybody who contributed to date. In the next 10 minutes or so, I will set up the historical background, sketch the different routes of escape, and concentrate on the problematic year of 1970. Then I will ask 5 speakers to describe their experience and routes of escape. So let us have a quick look at the historical background to those who are unfamiliar with it. Post-1967 Six-Day War, the residual Jewish community in Iraq of 3,000 suffered the worst and the longest period of persecution. Several dozens were arrested, some were tortured, and severe restriction on movement and economic activities were initiated. Clubs fired their Jewish members, home phones were cut, import licenses were revoked, Jews were fired from their jobs, and private companies those finishing their secondary education were not allowed to enter universities. In 1968, the Ba'ath came to power, led by Bakr and Saddam, and soon the persecution intensifies. Many Jews were arrested in November 1968 and trialed on fabricated spying charges. January 1969 was a black day when 9 Jews were hanged and bodies were displayed in public squares in Baghdad and Basra to the attendance of 500,000 cheering people. From 1968 to 1973, over 50 people were killed. In addition to the 9, another 3 were hanged, 7 died in torture, dozens disappeared without a trace, and a family of the Qashqoush was slaughtered, family of 5 in their home in April 73. In summer 1970, Jews started escaping via Iraqi Kurdistan to Iran and then to Israel and the rest of the world. This is the story that we are going to tell. The rest, at the end of 1971, left with passport. Still some people actually escaped. By 1975, number of Jews were less than 300 and today are a handful. Having described this terrible environment, all Iraqi Jews, and particularly the young one, were desperate to leave at any cost if the opportunity arises. Now we have several stories running together that I managed to unravel, and I hope, and some of you may know them, I can describe them without complicating the picture. In the 1960s and throughout the 1970s, Israel gave assistance to the Kurds under the leadership of Mustafa al-Barazani via Iran under the Shah, ranging from medical to military training and intelligence, as well as selling military equipment. Iran and Israel had very good commercial, military, and intelligence relations those days, and the Mossad operated in Iran and cooperated with the Iranians. Following the 1969 hanging of Iraqi Jews, Golda Meir asked Zvi Tamir, the head of the Mossad, to do what he can to extricate the Jews of Iraq. So he traveled to Iran and met with the Shah and his government and intelligence people and asked them to facilitate the entry of Iraqi Jews once they had the opportunity to escape. To this they agreed. At the same time, he also met with the Barazani and asked for the Kurdish help in smuggling Iraqi Jews when the opportunity arises. At that time, there was a war raging between the Iraqi army and the rebel Kurds seeking autonomy and equal rights. The opportunity for the Jews to escape availed itself when the Iraqi government signed a ceasefire and a truce with the rebel Kurds in March 1970, ending all military hostilities. Though the road from Baghdad to the north was full of Iraqi checkpoints and military posts, people could now travel to the north on the basis of internal tourism. In fact, many Jews used to travel in the 50s and 60s in the summer to the resorts of North Iraq to enjoy the cool summer air and the amazing natural views. Northern Iraq is a very rugged and mountainous area, with some of the mountains rising to 3,000 meters high and connecting with the mountains of southeast Turkey and East Iran. Some Iraqi Jews escaped during the years 1964 to 1967, largely via Shatt al-Arab, south in Basra, but this route became very difficult, and with the constant watchful eye of the Mukhabarat and Al-Amin, the security agencies, no Jews, as far as I am aware, attempted this route after 1967 Six-Day War. There were a few individuals or families who escaped via Khanaqin in the east, like Dr. Gurji Rabi' family and Samir Shayq in September 1967, believe it or not, or via the desert route, or bypassing Badra and Jassan, taken by Joyce Hakham and her husband Zuhair, and several other families. But the majority, however, escaped via two routes that we will describe today, one via Erbil and the other via Slemania in the north. At some stage, it's not clear when, or probably as early as the beginning of 1970 in Israel, they started collecting names and letters from families that had relatives in Iraq. The aim was to send reliable people to contact the head of families in Baghdad and to tell them that once they succeed in getting to Erbil in North Iraq, they can escape with the help of the Kurds. Everything was arranged on the Kurdish side of the border and in Iran. What I understood that on the Israeli side, they had little idea about where the Jews lived in terms of the wide area between Battawin and Masbah and their status. They were probably still thinking of the old Jewish area in Baghdad. You can just come to one area and just tell them to go out. Now back to the main story. The first one, as far as we are aware, who took advantage of the so-called freedom of travel into the north and managed after several visits to find a smuggler who would help him escape was the late Fuad Maksoudai. On June the 9th, 1970, he left to the north by car with his wife and two little daughters via Kirkuk, Erbil, to the resort of Salah ad-Din, where he contacted the smuggler known as Dawood and met other smugglers from a tribe which was anti-Barazani. Instead of a smooth and short journey, they had a very hard journey, climbing mountains and crossing valleys on mules and walking, arriving to the border after 6 days of continuous travel on the night of the 14th of June. In Iran, he was arrested and interrogated and mistreated for several days, thinking that he was a spy or an Iraqi officer, until the 20th of June, when an Iranian Jews vouched for him in a small town called Razia. He eventually got to Tehran, where he was debriefed by the Mossad to hear the story of his escape and get information on Jewish families in Baghdad. The story of the escape and detailed diary he kept from prior to 6-day war was published in a book, Waiting to be Hanged, and is available online. The news of Saudai's successful, though difficult escape triggered many of the Iraqi Jews to try to escape via Kurdistan. Many were looking for Kurdish contact and going to the north, wandering in the different cities, villages, and resorts, looking for Kurdish smugglers to take them, not knowing that there is a semi-official route already arranged between the Israelis, Kurds, and Iran. On the 7th of August 1970, the Zilkha family with Yusuf Sheena left Baghdad to Slemania route, managed to cross the border and arriving to Tehran after a week. Sheena was debriefed in the Israeli consulate in Iran, and then information was sent to his father Nassim Sheena about the Erbil Hajj Umran escape route. Yusuf will tell you the story. Meanwhile, Jews began flocking to the north. Some of them succeeded in crossing the border via contacts they established. I'm talking about the Erbil route. At the end of August and early September, like Maurice Shohet and family, who later passed the news to some of his relatives, Dr. Ihsan Samra and Farid Samra families, who left soon after that, as well families such as the Khlef, who were looking for smugglers. Maurice sent information to Ustad Ishaq. Other families used this route and managed to cross the border in early September, such as Sheena and his partners, based on the information that he received. Salman Masri Group and many others, and I'm still trying to collect names, as well as Shohet family. Maurice Shohet will talk about their group's successful escape using the same route. But soon disaster fell on the Jews attempting to escape. Dozens of Jews arrived from the end of August to mid-September to the north, largely concentrating in the resort of Shaqlawa and Salah ad-Din, with very obvious presence, and some of them very indiscreet, looking for smugglers. There is no time to get into detail, but in summary, the government found out and rounded 136 Jews on the 16th of September and brought them back to Baghdad for interrogation. Now you can imagine the situation of trying to get rid of any indication that they were planning to escape. Some of the detainees were subjected to torture. They stayed for more than 2 weeks before they were released with bail arranged by the Jewish lawyer Abdulaziz, who was kidnapped, in fact, in 1972 and disappeared without any trace. Escape via the Erbil route ceased almost completely, with a few exceptional personal attempts. I was told by a reliable source that, in fact, Barazani was afraid after Saddam threatened him with opening military action again. In a sense, the government knew about the escape and the Kurdish help. Individual endeavors to escape by identifying smugglers resumed in November and December 1970 via the Sulaimaniya route, which was more difficult, particularly with winter approaching. Khalid Musa gave information about a smuggler he managed to contact to many families who escaped via this route before his own escape. Others found their own way via other contacts. Nazar will describe his escape via this route. As far as I can ascertain, as of now, the news about the difficulty of this Sulaimaniya route became apparent, and I have not heard of anyone leaving in the first few months of 1971, but I will be corrected if anyone will tell me that. In July 1971, a southern eastern desert difficult route bypassing Bedra and Jassan was used by two groups. Joyce will describe this route. And finally, escape via the Erbil Hajj Umran route to Iran was resumed when Naim Attar was informed of it. His children were the first to use it in July 1971, and he helped organize the escape of dozens of families in about 2.5 months, July to September 1971. Hundreds of Jews escaped in a very organized and civil way to Iran. Lily Shor will describe this route, which is the same route that before, but a different time and different organization. By the late 1971, the Iraqi government started slowly issuing passport, and throughout the early 1970s, Iraqi Jews took advantage of traveling to Istanbul and from there to Israel or to other destinations, such as via Lebanon to England, Netherlands, Canada, and the United States. I left many details because of the limited time, but I will include it in the book that I hope will be published in the second half of this year. Now I will call on the panel speakers one by one to tell his story. Before that, I will share a screen with you to show you different routes, and when each speaker talks, I will show his or her route. Google Map of today can help, but remember, it was 50 years ago. So some of the villages, such as Darband, which came all the time, people talking about it, where many people met their contact, were destroyed by Saddam, and then as well as bombed during the Iraqi-Iranian War of the 1980s. If time permits, at the end, I will also show some short videos about the routes, but thank you very much. So I'm going to share a screen and tell me if you see it. Okay, can you see the screen?
Yes, it's okay.
Yes? Okay.
Yes, thank
so
you.
These are the basic routes. This is North Iraq. This is Mosul. People may know, or some people may know them, or sorry, most of the Iraqis, you will know them. Some other may not necessarily know where they are. This is Mosul. This is Erbil. This is Sulaimaniya. This is Baghdad. Okay. Now, basically, all that area around here is Kurdish. So the route that we were talking about from Baghdad to Sulaimaniya via Kirkuk, and then from Sulaimaniya, most likely This is the route they took to Penjuin and crossing to Iran. This was a problematic route, very ill-defined in terms of people not knowing exactly where they are. They cannot, I haven't heard anybody identifying for me any place. Remember, all of these, most of the people went, all of them went at night in a very bad conditions, nothing, they do, just don't know where they are. The other route was to Erbil, and from Erbil to Hajj Umran, and basically crossing the border to Iran from there. The road that the one which I described via Khanaqin, which a few family took, by the way, this is a road which many Jews were smuggled before the Tasqiyat in the 1940s, is the Khanaqin route. And then the last road which I described was the one which was taken by Joyce and other families, is via the Bedra and Jassan to the east, which is the desert route. I did not include here the Shatt al-Arab because nobody really, in the period that we are talking about, went, which is well south. Okay. Now, once you got to the border, basically this is how you actually went to Tehran. It's quite far away. It's hundreds of kilometers away. Some of them went by train, by car, several stations, by bus, and so on. But this is basically, as you can see here, that is Hajj Umran, that's Penjuin, that's Khanaqin, that's basically the border with Badra. And this is the way you will get to Tehran. Okay. So now I call on the different people to start talking. Dawood, can you open, please, the microphone for Yusuf Sheena? Okay, Yusuf, please go ahead.
So the story was like this. The Zilkha family and Odi, and God bless his soul, Jamal and Norma, and they were all leaving to, they wanted to leave and escape. And Jamal was working for a Kurdish guy at the time. And he gave him a connection in the north. And they went, so they knew we were very good friends, and they knew I wanted to leave. So they came to my parents and they asked them if they would let me live with them. And because of the fear of being captured or finding out that I left, my parents said no. And they went to the north. And as you described before, the road was not clear, and they didn't find a way to leave. So they came back to Baghdad. And I went, and then they went again, and they asked my dad if I could go, and he said yes. And that's when we left to Sulaimaniya. And then there is a town on the border which is called Penjuin. And I'm not sure if we stayed in Penjuin or in Sulaimaniya, but from Penjuin, we went on mules to a small town in Iran, which I think took about, from Penjuin to the border of Iran, about maybe a couple of hours, I would say. I can't remember exactly, but and when we got to the border of Iran, the smuggler said, now you just walk to that police station over there and tell them you are Kalimian, which means Jewish in Persian. So that's exactly what we did. We walked to the police station and we told them that we are Kalimian. And it seems like after Fuad Saudai left, they were aware that Jews were going to leave Iraq. So they treated us, you know, they welcomed us, they treated us well, they put us in a hotel. And from there, they didn't know what to do with us exactly. But they contacted Tehran, and we stayed in a hotel for a couple of days, and then we moved from Pashmach to Mariwan to Senendej. And I think we stayed in a hotel in Senendej. And then from Senendej, we went to Tehran. And at that time, the Jews were staying at the Sinai Hotel. And I stayed at the Dalal family, Moshe Dalal, who used to live there and used to be partners with my dad in Iraq before 1950.
Yusuf, who did you see there of Jews that already arrived?
Oh, I saw Valda, I saw the Khalaschis, I saw, but they were not there yet.
Yeah,
I saw them after.
they were only at the end of August.
We left on August 7th. On August 7th, we were already in Iran. We arrived in Iran on August 7th. And from there, it took about 7 days to get to Tehran. So let's say the 14th of August. And they came later. But that's where everybody was staying. So I used to come to Hotel Sinai just to see them after, you know, when they came to ask about my father. But as you said, I was debriefed at the time by the Israeli consulate, and they asked me to write a letter to my dad, and they assured me that I was safe and they will get the letter delivered to him. And I hesitated, but then Moshe Dalal at the time assured me that I could trust them and I don't have to worry about anything. I just can say whatever I want. So I wrote actually a couple of letters, and Khedher, you have copies of my letters that my dad brought back to me after he left Iraq. And somebody went to my, so our escape was, I would call it very, very easy and wasn't complicated. Our escape. I don't know about, you know, the route itself, but we escaped from Baghdad, from the north very quickly to Iran. And once we arrived in Iran, it was, you know, everything was fine.
Yusuf, please tell us
yes.
about what happened when your father got your letters, and as I understand, about 30 letters.
Yeah, the Israelis had asked other people to write letters. A lot of them were living in Israel, and some of them had, you know, from different families who had families in Iraq, and including some letters from my uncle and my aunt who were living in Israel and who left in 1950. And this gentleman went to my father and he asked for him by name. And he said, I have something to deliver to you. And he gave him a bunch of letters, probably 30 of them from families in Israel, and 2 of them were from me. And the contents of the letters were disturbing because some of them described Israel, described other things. And you know, the situation in Iraq wasn't a safe situation. So my father thought about it and decided to take the letters and burn them. He looked at who, you know, who the names are and everything else. And then he just put them, you know, in a fire, and he burned all the letters. My letters were very, you know, they didn't have any names and didn't have any reference to Israel or anything else. So he kept my letters. And the gentleman told him, whenever you want to leave, you go to, as you described, to Erbil. And from Erbil, there was a route, you know, you identify yourself and we'll take you out. So my father, I believe, told Naim Attar about the route. And maybe a few other people, I'm not sure really. And then he decided he didn't have any in mind to leave at all. So then he decided that he wanted to leave. He didn't want to stay anymore. And he spoke to his partners and told them, listen, I'm leaving. If you want to leave, you come with me. If you don't want to leave, it's fine, you can stay. So they all said they wanted to leave. And they followed that route, and actually Anwar Peres, and I see Yusuf Dabbi is with us here. So he was one of the people who actually left with them at that time. So I'm not sure of the date exactly, but they left, and Anwar Peres actually left with his car, and he came to Iran with his car. And they took the car at the time, and then eventually they released the car to him. But my father, when he arrived by train to Tehran, they were, the Israeli consulate, the representative or the council was waiting for him at the train station, and immediately took him immediately to the consulate to debrief him and ask him about the letters. And he told them, I burned the letters. So they asked him if he was ever a spy or if he ever worked as a spy, because they were concerned about these letters. Once they sent them, they realized that they had made a mistake by sending all these letters with all these references. Mm-hmm. And after that, you know, we all left to Israel. I stayed in Israel for 1 year, and I was at the Technion at the time, and then I came to New York, and I studied at NYU, and now I'm here still.
Okay. Thank you, Yusuf. As of course, as you are very aware that the whole incident caused a lot of anger, but you explain the reasons, and people has to take your word or whatever they think. We're not here to change minds.
No, absolutely.
But as I mentioned, people have to think at what terrible period that we were there, and how sensitive such information could be disastrous to many people if they fell in the wrong hand. Okay, thank you, Yusuf. Now, Maurice, please go expand your route, which is the Erbil Hajj Umran route. But in 1970, when this route, strictly speaking, was the semi-official route already, you know, arranged by the Kurds and Israelis and the Iranian, but not many people knew about it. Just a few people knew about this official route and the code and all this kind of thing. But you, as you told me, you did it your own way. Okay, Maurice.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. I unmuted you.
Thanks. As you said,
Maurice, fix your camera, please.
Lift your head. And please, Maurice, stick with about 10 minutes, okay?
try. We decided to leave Iraq, of course, in August 1970. We approached my maternal uncle and a couple of other friends, individuals, who quickly agreed in turn to join us. And it was our Jewish neighbor, Dr. Najiru Ben Cohen, who fled the country a few days earlier together with his wife, their 3 children, and his in-laws, provided us with a smuggler's name and address that they used. Following their arrival in Iran, he sent us a pre-accepted word with an emissary from those who smuggled them. And the word that we agreed upon ahead of time, it was that, you know, the interpretation was that the route was very difficult, but we decided to take the risk. It was September 2nd, 1970. We left Baghdad, 13 people. It was around 4 a.m. and took taxis and traveled to the town of Shaqlawa in the Arbil Kurdish district. Our goal was—
It's here.
I'm sorry?
No, I'm just saying to people to see it on the map.
Our goal was Jamil's coffee place. That's the place that we're told to go to. Jamil was obviously a Kurdish. That was our destination. After traveling for about 6 hours, we arrived at the provided address. It was a small coffee and restaurant place. The owner, Jamil, received us, and we were hidden in the restaurant side room for 5 days. Of course, we paid him the amount he asked for to smuggle us to Iran. On September 7th—
sorry, Maurice, you mentioned you were one of the people who paid very heavily in terms of the cost.
we had no choice. We were told ahead of time to pay 5,000 dinars.
Wow.
At the time, and we did. On September 7th at 7 p.m., and after staying there for 5 days, a large Jeep parked in front of the coffee place. 2 armed Kurdish personnel stepped out of it and approached Jamil, who gave them a list with our names, 13 people. Quickly packed our belongings, got into the Jeep, and left Shaqlawa, escorted by the 2 Kurdish men. The vehicle drove right through the main street of town towards the resort of Salah ad-Din. There at a local coffee house, we saw about, my estimation, 25 Jews who were also on their way to flee the country, obviously with the help of a different group of smugglers.
Will you mention some names?
As far as I remember, some of the people that Sheena mentioned, like probably his father's partners, like Anwar Peros, Khduri Dabbi, that's memory.
Okay.
So, of course, we ignored each other out of fear. On my way, I forgot to mention, I think in Shaqlawa, when I was walking one of those days, I spotted Jamil Naji.
So he wasn't, okay?
He, we ignored each other. We looked at each other from afar. We ignored each other. So after a short rest in Salah ad-Din, we continued traveling towards Gali Ali Beg. That's another attractive resort in the north, sorry.
This is Ali Gali Beg.
Ali Gali Beg.
Yeah.
Gali
Here.
Gali Ali Beg. At about 10 p.m., we reached Hajj Umran, the most remote Kurdish stronghold on the Iran-Iraq border in that area. The car stopped in front of one of the houses, which was surrounded by armed men. "Get off quietly," one of our escorts said. "Straight into the house here." In a moment, we all jumped out of the cars with our belongings in our hands. Two Kurds directed us to a large room in one of the wings of the house, in which 4 armed men and 3 Kurdish women were sitting. A young woman served us a hot tea. One of the men briefed us before our departure, and I am trying now to quote him. He said, "We are leaving for Iran. A moment of weakness and insecurity could reveal you and ourselves, and then, as you surely must know, we should be in a serious danger. We will proceed by foot for 3 hours and will reach another country. The path is neither paved nor safe. You will have to obey our orders all along the way until we arrive at our destination." End of quotes, as far as I remember what he said. When he spelled the words "by foot," we were caught by surprise. It was in Baghdad where we were told that we will be crossing the border by cars, as other Jews previously did. But it turned to be different. We did not expect that it was going to be an easy escape from Iraq, but we never imagined that we had to take this kind of paths. We were seized by fear and thought to ourselves, whatever will be, will be. To our surprise, we were asked again for another payment.
Wow.
Of 1,000 dinars. After we had paid Jamil at his coffee place, my father told them, "We paid, we don't have any other money. All what I have in my pocket is about 120 dinars. He picked them up and gave them. They were satisfied with the 120 when they asked for 1,000. Obviously, we had no choice but to comply with the request. The 4 smugglers who would accompany us in our escape asked us to leave our belongings behind so they could be transported on mules the following day. It was a clear indication that we will never see them again. So we set forth on our way over hills and mountains. The evening was cool and pleasant. The moonlight aided us seeing our way. The area was full of smugglers carrying different type of merchandise on mules. And we got acquainted to one of the smugglers' business methods of operation. Once a whistle was heard from one group of smugglers, a similar response was immediately echoed back from the other group, a sign of a friendly presence. The 2 groups will then continue on their own routes. From time to time, and whenever we realized a suspected movement in the mountainous area, we had to stop and hide. After an hour of walking, sometimes running, we reached a swamp and traversed it, though it wasn't easy. Few of us fell down and were bruised. But we continued in our escape. At a certain point in time, we had to climb a tall mountain, and suddenly we heard a dog barking. From every side, searchlights, projectors were directed at the mountain. We stood still and stared at one another as the lights are directed towards us and tears filling our eyes. "Lie down," shouted our guides. Frightened, my uncle began to smoke nervously. One of the smugglers screamed at him. I'm quoting him, "I will shoot you right here if you don't turn off the cigarette." All our guides quickly ran towards where it seems the dog barking had sounded from. They left us alone to the mercy of God at the middle of the mountain. We said to ourselves that our end had come. Our end has come, and we looked at each other, unable to express the last goodbye words that we had to say to each other as the soldiers from the mountain were heading towards us. After 10 minutes, during which we were waiting for our fate to be decided, the searchlights and the projectors went out. The barking was heard no longer, and the four guides rejoined us. It seemed like a miracle was happening. Our own interpretation of what took place was that our smugglers might have known the Iraqi border guards, and they might have left us to go and make kickbacks, some kind of payment arrangements with them. In return, the guards had closed their eyes on our escape. And we have to remember, after all, this kind of cooperation have always been a way of life at the long Iran-Iraq border. As I mentioned earlier, we had previously paid our smugglers a large sum of money in return for their help in our escape from the country. So they might have used part of that money to pay the border guards. That's our interpretation of what happened. Obviously, when the guards came back, we could ask no questions about what took place, but to listen to orders. We were instructed to continue on our way. None of us believed really we were safe. Privately, we wondered whether we should feel glad or prepare ourselves for the worst to come. We continued our walking in the hills and mountains. After another about 90 minutes more, at 2 a.m. on the 8th of September, we saw unarmed soldiers patrolling near a tall watchtower. That's an Iranian soldier, one of our guides told us. Of course, the pounding joy in our hearts could not be described. we had an opportunity to throw a last glance back at the country where we had grown up and lived. I never thought that I will have a chance to meet Kurds later on, but about 7 years ago,
Maurice, just stop here because of time. We can resume that, but I just want to make a comment on this. Maurice is describing actually almost the semi-official route, which is supposed to be from Hajj Umran to take no more than half an hour to cross by car. But they had to go and walk all that way up and down. You can now say you can imagine when walking by foot, what is the half an hour in the mountainous area meant. Thank you, Maurice.
Thank you.
Nazar, please.
Hi, everybody. My name is Nazar Yahia. I went to Frankini School and we were in the same class as Khedher for all our school days. And then we separated to university. When we went to university, I would like to talk about our escape route that we took. As Khedher told you, we were all desperate to get out, and everybody was trying to get a lead where for some reliable Kurd to take him out of the country. The word here is reliable. So we didn't have any leads, and my father was not going to the north start fishing for leads. And Khedher told you about the sad result where people were rounded up and thrown into jail. The break came when the Kibir family, Salman al-Kibir, they got a lead and they wanted to send their daughter out of the country. They were staying there. They had their own reasons, and they were looking for a reliable family to escort their daughter. So they approached my father, who was very well known as very trustworthy and reliable, and asked him if he would accept to come with them. So he agreed, and we were told that to prepare for the route, it would be through Suleymania. The rate was about 400 dinars per head. And we were told to prepare warm clothes because it was going to be very cold. And we started arranging things. And that was middle of December in the midwinter. The final word came that we were going to leave on Christmas Eve, because that would there would be a lot of traffic on the road, and the checkpoints would not be so inquisitive. So on that day, that was 24th of December 1970, myself, my sister Mona, my father Jack, and my mother Violet were taken to the Kabir house by the Mrs. Kabir, and we were waiting there for the smuggler. We were told to bring two suitcases and no more. And my father was very strict in not taking along any money or any valuables. So he said, we don't need to tempt the smugglers. They are going to be paid and we are not going to have anything on us. So we went there, and the smuggler did come at around, I would say 12 o'clock at night in a big American car with abayas for the women. And after chatting a little bit, having tea, and then he bundled us into the car and off we went. We left Baghdad, I think it was about 1:30 in the morning. And he took the route north to Baquba, then to Kirkuk, and then from there to Slemania. There were checkpoints on the road. He told us that he had arranged everything with them, but it was just a plain nonsense. He didn't arrange anything. He was just hoping that they wouldn't ask too many questions, and that's how it went. So we arrived in Suleymania at dawn, and he took us to his own house. He put us in the top floor and told us not to leave, and we will be crossing the border that night. So they brought us food, tea, and other things. Wonderful Kurdish cream, qaima, and honey, and hot loaves. And so we had to kill that day. We, together with Odile, the daughter of Salman al-Kibir. So night came, and we had some bad news. No mules to be found. It seems that there was a big rush on the mules that weekend, and so we had to wait another day, which was not good because that would be dangerous and it could be discovered. But peeping along seeing on the porch there, we saw two big bales of Persian carpets. I mean, each was about 2 by 2 by 1 meter high. And I would say each weighed about 1/2 to 1 ton each. Turned out that the Kibir family didn't just want to send their daughter out, but also their precious carpets, which is something not very intelligent to do. So anyway, we are stuck with those carpets. They were calling the shots, not us. Okay, next day came, and in evening came and said, okay, we got hold of the mules and we'll be going out to the border. So it was about 9 o'clock at night. The women with the abayas, and we were going into a Land Rover, while all of a sudden a gray Beetle with no license plates drove along the road, and we were in panic because this is the car, the usual car that's used by the security people. Suleymania was still under Iraqi rule, and these were the Amin, the feared secret police, and if they caught us, then that would be the end. So also Kaka Jamal was in panic. He pushed us into the Land Rover and drove at full speed out of town. About 1 minute, we left Suleymania and he drove into the wilderness. We couldn't see where we were going, but we understood we were going to Penjuin, very close to the border. And this is the route that he took. And we could see in the distance that there was the light of a car that seemed to be following us. And also we were very much afraid. And then there were 2 cars. And we really thought this was it. This was the end. They were chasing us and we are going to be arrested. But thankfully, in about 2-3 minutes, the lights faded and we were alone. So we were driving into the wilderness. It was all black, but covered with snow. It was 26th of December. Snow covered everything outside. The mountains there were about 2,000 meters above sea level. So it was very, very cold. We were driving in the Land Rover with Kaka Jamal, and all of a sudden, after probably 1.5 hours, we got stuck in the mud. And we descended from the car, we tried to push it, but we were not much of, let's say, strong men, and we didn't manage to push the car. So Kaka Jamal said he's going to the near village and bring some people to help us out. And so he left us in the wilderness, 5 people, 5 Jews, in the middle of nowhere with a stuck Land Rover. Anyway, he did come back. He did come back in about, I think, 20 minutes with 4 or 5 sturdy Kurds. They pushed the car in about, took them 5 seconds, and off we went. So another half an hour, I think, went by, and then we reached the mule parking lot. There we saw the mules that were waiting for us. 5 mules, and for 5 people. So my father asked Kaka Jamal, what about you? You said you are going to come to take us over. He said, no, I will not come. I can't make it. My 2 nephews will take you along, and you can trust them. They are just as trustworthy as myself. So what can we do? That's in the middle of nowhere, and he's calling the shots. So we climbed the mules and off we went. We hoped that would be the last journey out of Iraq. And we started probably along the same route that Yusuf took, I don't know, because we couldn't make anything out. It was all white, and we didn't know anything about the surroundings. So when are we going to arrive? Half an hour. Okay, half an hour came and went. When are we going to arrive? Half an hour. So, and this is how it went. It was quite cold, I'd say probably -10. We were heavily dressed. We have about 3-4 layers, but still we were not walking, so we were not producing any heat. And we started freezing, especially about the mouth and eyes. Time came by where we couldn't move our lips, couldn't speak coherently. But it was so serene, it was so peaceful that we didn't feel afraid at all. We were there all alone in the middle of nowhere. All around us was white, and it belonged to us, or we belonged to it. That was it. That was the feeling there, at least my feeling. So then we crossed a small stream, and they told us, okay, this is the border with Iran, and now we are in Iranian territory. So they took us to the near border post at the other side of the border, and the guards came out and he told them Yahud. So they understood we are Jews, and they saw it's a family with women and that. So we didn't present any danger to them. So they brought us in and put us in a room with a stove, and they brought some tea. And so we started thawing, and after a while we could talk again. But whatever we did not hold on with our own hands, it just disappeared. They snatched everything, and they went through everything, and whatever they thought was of value, they expropriated. But what could we do? We were under their mercy. In about 2 hours, they told us, okay, they are going to send us to the nearest border town. That was Meriwan. And it was because we were in a border post, not a town. They took us there and put us in very filthy hotel. I wouldn't say minus several stars, and waited for the morning. And over there in that guest house, we met the Naim Musa family with his wife and 2 children, and also 3 Atrakshi brothers who came by different routes, and we all met in that filthy guest house. In the morning, they took us to the police station to give deposition, and they told us, okay, everything is okay, we will send you to Tehran, but you can't leave here, you are technically under arrest. So, okay, under arrest, but we were free. At last we were free, we were loafing about Mariwan, which was very, I would say, a very primitive place. Some of you have been to such out of the world places in Iraq, you can imagine. But anyway, people were friendly, didn't take any notice of us, and everything was fine. At night, we were waiting for our belongings to come. Our 2 suitcases did come to the guest house, but of course, no carpets. So we decided to wait another day for the carpets, see if they come. And so we spent another day in that hotel, doing absolutely nothing. So when evening came and still no carpets, we decided, okay, this time we're not going to wait anymore, we are going to Tehran. So we told the police that we are leaving, and in the morning, they put us on a bus to Senendej, all 5 of us. Senendej was the provincial capital, and they sent a police officer as an escort, because technically we were still under arrest, but also probably to arrange things at Senendej. So it took us the whole day to reach Senendej, about 8 hours by bus going up and down the mountains. And we reached Senendej at dusk, put us in a hotel, which was much more decent than the one in Mariwan. And we stayed the night there. The next day...
Nazar, okay, if I can stop you, unless it's very important, you know, in a sense, I'm looking at the actual escape route until Iran, more or less. Unless you have something important to say.
Yes, I have something important to say, but it's not connected to the agenda. I would like to pay tribute and give credit to 2 very fine ladies, very noble ladies. The Renem Safi, the mother of Lindam Safi, and the mother of
Anisha
Shor, who put a wonderful operation in giving help to Jewish families who had a very difficult time because the head of the family was fired from work and they couldn't make a living. So they went and collected contributions from well-to-do members of the community, all anonymously, and together they gave it to Sid Simha at Frankini School. Sid Simha distributed the money to the needy families, also anonymously, and also they distributed food and sandwiches to those needy children, and nobody knew who the donors were or who the receivers were. And this is how it should be done, discreetly and delicately, so that people maintain their pride and self-respect.
Thank you very much. That was very, very important things to say. Really, my mother was in the school, so she knew of this operation that really saved so many Jews in that period? Thank you, Nazar.
I think I had to say it because it was going under the radar and had to give.
I'm glad you brought it. I'm glad. If you are seeing the screen, right? Yes. So this is topographical screen, so you can see how mountainous the area, whether the Sulaimaniya Benjamin route or the Hajj Umran. In a sense, the minute that you don't go by car, it can take hours and hours and very, very difficult conditions. Now I'm going to ask Joyce to talk about her route, which is completely different route, and only a few families, in fact, 2 groups as far as we are aware, that went that route. And I'm going to show it again on the map. Now you can see here is a complete desert, completely different, different terrain. Can you see it? Yes, Nazar, can you see it?
Yep.
Okay, so this is
I
Baghdad.
would like to add one thing. The carpets never made it.
Sorry, who?
The carpets never made it. They are still in Iraq, I believe.
Okay, so this is a route which actually basically it comes from Baghdad via Mu'askar al-Rashid, which people who studied in the Hikmah University know that, and then to the Madain, which is Taysafun, and eventually it crosses into the desert, very rough route. And again, Joyce will describe it, and then maybe I will comment afterwards on it. Joyce, please, unmute yourself. Okay, yeah. You can talk.
Yes. Good evening to all participants. I am Joyce Hakham Dawood. I was married to the late Zuhair, grandson of Hakham-Sasson Khedher, the head of the Jewish community from the 30s until 1970. We were married in the year 1965. After the Six-Day War, we moved to live with my in-laws due to the Jewish uncomfortable situation. Zuhair's father, Shaul, was arrested in November 1968 and put what's called Qasr al-Nihaya, the palace of the end. He was released in November 1969. Our son Ari was born in August 1969. Shaul, Zuhair's father, never had the chance to attend his brit. In 1970, many Jews started escaping via the north of Iraq with the Kurds' assistance. Same year, in September, as Khedher noted, 136 Jews were arrested while trying to escape. Due to this incident, we postponed our escape until later. On 1971, we applied for passport, us and my in-laws. Spring 1971, my in-laws were granted the passport. Somehow, they arranged to include our son, Ari, age less than 2 years, to travel with them to London. This freed us to take the risk of escaping. On the 13th of July 71, we were approached by our friend Kamal Ibrahim Rahamim to join him with his 3 sisters to escape. Also, the family of Dr. Musa Nurallah was included, another couple, a brother and a sister. All in all, we were a group of 12. On the 14th of July, 71, minivan came to pick us last. So the whole group of 12 already in. The first part of our escape took approximately 1 hour, driving on a paved straight road. Then, all of a sudden, The driver turned right off the road on unmarked sandy roads. 2 hours later, the van stopped near an open pickup big truck waiting for us. We were told by the smugglers to get on it. Now, we started our second leg of our escape journey in the desert. Driving about 1 hour, we reached a spot, got out of the truck to rest. Time was around 6 p.m. There, we were informed by the 2 smugglers that it's too late to cross the border same night as promised. Hearing that, some of the group got panicked. The smugglers didn't expect such a reaction. So Zuhair approached the smugglers and persuaded them to give him a rifle so the group will feel protected. Now it's getting darker. We got again on the open truck, continuing our desert route. After a while, we reached a place where a pack of 8 donkeys with their guide waiting for us. The smuggler and the guide somehow managed to push 6 of the donkeys to mount onto the truck. The donkeys were sitting in the middle between us as we seated on 2 sides of the truck. Again, we continued our journey about 5 hours, where we reached a high plateau about 11 p.m. We were told to leave the truck and wait there, with 1 smuggler with us. The reason was they had to go back to bring us food and water. They took the donkeys with them. While waiting there, I had the time to observe the incredible clear sky full of shining stars close each to other, a breathtaking view. Few hours went by. We saw a vehicle light moving towards us. The smuggler who stayed with us thought it's not our truck. He ordered us to lie down in order not to be exposed. After a short while, he realized it's our truck. So, thank God, we felt safe. They arrived around 4 a.m. Without the donkeys, they took them to the point where we will start our escape journey. Almost no one had the appetite to eat the barbecued meat in the early hours of the morning, let aside the jug of dark water. Again, we got on the pickup truck for a short ride this time to find a natural trench so we can spend the whole day until our move towards the border. They covered the trench with white cloth to shield us from the hot July sun. About 5 p.m. last time riding the pickup truck, we arrived at a certain spot where the 6 donkeys waiting there. Around 6 p.m., we started our journey. Part of the group mounted on donkeys. The riding group exchanged positions with the walking ones. Only Zuhair walked all the time, the last with the other smuggler. Now, the master smuggler was guiding in the front with the rifle on his back shoulder and the upper arms resting on it. The terrain was full of cracks, fissures, and a lot of desert thorns. While traveling, we heard the sound of barking dogs, saw the lights of villages very far away. We signaled to the smuggler to stop for a rest. He declined. It's too risky. We had to be in absolute silence all the way. Hours went by. We reached a small shallow stream. We had to cross it. When reaching the other side, we were permitted to rest, and the smugglers were a bit relaxed. Continuing our journey for some time, not long, we reached a place where the smuggler told us, "That's it, you are in the Iranian border," which wasn't true. We discovered that later. What I'm talking, it's taking hours and hours. The time was about 2 a.m. The master smuggler told Zuhair, "We are leaving you all now," and explained that 3 donkeys were left for us. They were tied so much so not to escape. The smuggler explained to Zuhair, "On the first light of the morning, you lead. In front of you, you will see a route that have a route, an unpaved sandy narrow route, and that you have to keep on going straight all the way until you reach the Iranian police station. Its color, brown reddish. The 3 of us, Zuhair, me, and Yvonne Rahamim, riding on the donkeys, we started our journey. The rest of the group, 9 of them, said they want to wait for us where we left them, and we come back with the Iranian police to pick them up. We started going on the ascending unpaved route, maybe more than 3 or 4 hours. The sun is getting hot, and we saw nothing. All of a sudden, a big truck on high speed came towards us from the top of the road. On it were about 40 armed Kurdish Iranians. He stopped, the driver stopped suddenly and signaled to us to get on the truck. We told him we are Kalimi. He nodded his head. Meanwhile, all 40 armed ones went down in a combat position. We had to explain manually to the driver that there are more people waiting to be rescued. When we all were we got the rest of the people, and when we all were safely in the truck, Dr. Nurallah sat beside the driver, spoke with him Persian, so he understood from the driver that 3 Iraqi border police came out of their station from the side, coming towards us. Only at that time, the Iranians spotted us and came to our rescue. We only felt safe when we got into the Iranian police station. By the way, we had a very delicious meal. And that's how we knew that the smugglers left us on the Iraqi borders. When we reached Tehran, we went to a village, and it took some time. To cut the story short, when we reached Tehran, we felt for the first time free at last, having such enjoyable time with my uncle's family, Zuhair relatives. We rejoined with our son, Ari, in Israel after 2 months of his departure on the 4th of August, 71.
Okay.
Yeah.
What I'm speculating, this is the road, which is basically today's road from Baghdad to Iran. Most likely it was not in that shape in the 50 years ago, but at least it takes you around the area where they actually walked. You can see all this desert road, very rough terrain, and somewhere around here where the border, they could have been got out of the main road into the sandy road, smuggling road, and eventually cross somewhere around this area, in and out. It's like a triangle here. and probably they recrossed into Iraq or near the Iraqi border and not the Iranian border. But eventually they got here and got out. Okay, thank you, Joyce. Now I call on Lily to basically describe a route that they took, which is actually the Arbil Hajj Umran route, which is Maurice mentioned. However, this is a completely different way of traveling. I would describe it in front of all the others who left in 1970 and also 1971. This is a kind of the Tariq al-Umara of the princes, in the sense everything was organized. Lily, please.
Okay, here.
Hi,
Yes.
Lily. Okay,
Hi.
great.
Hi.
So
Yes, hi, everybody.
back to the map of Arbil Hajj Umran, assuming that this is the road, which is the most defined road because it's a road where all the resorts that we know in the 50s and 60s lie on this road, the Shaqlawa, Salah ad-Din. So I would expect it's the right road. But now Lily is going to describe how her journey.
Yes, good evening, everyone. I'm Lily Mandelawi Shor, and I escaped with my family in August 1971. But our escape was luxurious comparing to the other stories, but not without different obstacles. Even starting in Baghdad. We were, with the tense atmosphere in Baghdad, my family wanted very much to leave Iraq. But my grandparents were not able to escape as my grandfather had health problems. But at last he got a passport in May 1971. My grandmother was to travel with him too, but not their daughter, she was about 20 years old. She was not permitted to accompany them. We planned to escape after their departure. So they sold their furniture, electric appliances and carpets, and we took the opportunity to sell some of ours together with them to avoid suspicion. Few days before their flight, the Ba'ath Security Services arrested my father and my aunt's husband, Abraham, and his neighbor, Naji Cohen. They came at 9 o'clock in the evening to our house to take my father. My mother cried in the street and begged them not to take him. She tried to prevent them from taking him, but it was not, nothing helped. They said it will take only half an hour and he will be back. If you want, you can follow us in your own car. Well, that was it. This was the same sentence they said to every Jew they arrested, and we know that some of them didn't survive the prison, or some of them were hanged publicly, and etc. So we knew this is the end, no chance of their coming back, and my grandparents will not leave when both their sons-in-law are in prison. But early in the next morning, a miracle happened. We suddenly saw my father came back. He came back. He, Abraham, his brother-in-law, and Naji, the neighbor, were released. The story was that the Ba'athis who arrested them called his superior to inform him that they arrested 3 Jews. He was cursed and shouted at and got the reply, "You idiot, don't you know that we have orders not to take any more Jews, not to arrest any more Jews now? Release them at once." So they were released. It was May 1971. They managed to hide this incident from my grandparents because they had to leave, and they took the flight eventually to Istanbul to our relief. Now we have to organize our escape. First to go is my young aunt, separated from her parents. So on July, she joined a Jewish family, and they made their way to Kurdistan, but they were followed by the Ba'ath security agents. They were Mukhabarat or Aman. So terrified from being caught, they returned to Baghdad. Suddenly we see her in our doorstep. The plan was that our family later on will, with my younger aunt, is to escape first. Then if we succeed to reach safe harbor, safe ground, we send a message to my other aunt with her family in Baghdad, so they, in order to, so they can follow us. If we are caught, at least my aunt and her family can be saved in Baghdad, and they will even might be able to take care of us if we are thrown to prison. Finally, we were informed by Naim Atal that we can go on the 1st of August. My father asked to leave only after the end of Tisha B'Av, Motzei Tisha B'Av, not before that. We were 6 people. We paid 350 dinars each. We packed, preparing for our escape. We packed, of course, it was very secret and discreet. We didn't speak about it. We hardly knew, we children, we hardly knew about it. But my mother had to share it with us because we packed our single suitcase in our father's cousin's house. And my mother sent us with me and my brother with a plastic bag each time with a shirt or a dress or something like that to avoid suspicion. But the problem was that in the corner of our street, there was the offices of the Aman, the Mukhabarat, or I don't know. But anyway, a guard was standing there on the gate, in the gate, at the gate, and so we had to cross the street and go on the other side of the street and have our eyes down on the ground, not to be caught. So we took the taxi from the cousin's house. And it was a Sunday. We took the taxi to the train station, and my father went to buy the tickets for the 6 of us. It's my parents, my aunt, and we 3 children. It was for the first class because it was a long trip through the night. We all sat on the bench in the train station. Next to my mother sat a Muslim woman covered with black abaya. She held a bottle of water and she washed her mouth and spat the water almost on my mother's feet. Very unusual and unexpected behavior from such a Muslim woman. It was the hottest days of the summer, August. It was Tisha B'Av. The heat was at its peak, as we say, and my mother and my aunt and me put on long sleeves blouses and buttoned up to the collar. Beneath all the sleeves and the collars, we had our gold chains and bracelets. It did not look good that we were wearing like that, but we had no choice because jewelry was our insurance with which we can pay and bribe if needed. So this woman looked at us all the time. She was watching us and we tried to avoid her. She put her hand on my mother's full handbag and asked, "Why your handbag is so full? What do you have inside it?" My mother said, "I have my lipstick and my face powder," and looked at to the other direction. She had other jewelry in her purse. So it was obvious that this woman worked for the Aman, the security service, and she was watching us. At last we got on the train, very stressed. The inspector arrived and asked to see the tickets. They were in my mother's handbag, confused and frightened. My mother gave him the whole handbag where she kept the tickets. My father saw that, and in an instant he slapped her hand and gently and said, "Didn't you hear the inspector? He wants only the tickets. He's asking for tickets." This is to show how nervous we were, how we couldn't think, and we just behaved very nervously, and we were terrified. So at last we got to Arbil. The next morning, we had all the time, all the night, the trip all the night. The next morning we arrived to Arbil after a sleepless night. Although we had a luxury air-conditioned booth, we took a taxi to Hajj Omran, Derbend, like as if we are a normal family spending a vacation in the beautiful area of Kurdistan. We didn't talk on the way in the taxi, very unusual behavior. Even my 6-year-old sister was silent all the way. She whispered to my mother that she was hungry, but the food was in the back trunk, and my mother told her to be patient. We arrived to a checkpoint with few soldiers. The taxi driver stopped. The soldier asked my father, where are you going? And asked for his identity card. He read my father's name aloud, Murad Eliyahu Murad Mandelawi. Are you Christian? It took my father a second to reply, but it was eternity for us. We could hear our hearts beating. So yes, my father answered. Ahlan wa sahlan bik, he said. Welcome, said the soldier, and he let us pass through. What a feeling. It was really a relief, stress and relief at the same time. So my father changed his family name from Shberu. We were lucky. Shberu, a Jewish name, to Mandelawi. After the departure of his family in the Tasqif in 1951, he felt safer not to be recognized as a Jew from his name in those difficult times. So he and another cousin stayed behind, and he waited for the government to take off the restrictions on the businesses and property of the Jews and maybe save something. So we passed this another obstacle. We made our way up north through beautiful mountains, green trees, beneath cliffs, waterfalls. So it could have been a very great vacation, but at least we enjoyed the amazing view. The drivers suggested to stop and buy a Coca-Cola for the little girl, but we urged him not to do so, to go on. My sister waited without complaining. Suddenly, the taxi driver stopped. We had a flat tire. With every stop, we felt the danger over our heads even more. We wanted to arrive as soon as possible to our destination, which was Derbend, Hajj Omran Derbend, where we have to meet the contact person. The driver went to the near village to get help. We waited there, restless. At last, we could go on. All the way, we checked that no cars are following us, especially those white beetles of the Ba'ath agents. But we had to be cautious and not to make the driver suspect that we are Jews. Finally, we arrived to a beautiful place with a narrow stream, with clear water, small shacks by the water, by the cool water, like paradise. This was the village or the place that the meeting point. Up the slope, there was a small building and open terrace. My father met the Kurdish contact person and gave him the password. It was in the early afternoon, and we were told to rest until the night. It was still it was Monday, the 2nd of August. There were other families, Jewish families, who came independently as we did, but we did not interact with them. We ignored them, with pretending we don't know each other. We all knew that we had to be cautious. At about 8 p.m., the Kurdish man called us to come up to this plateau, to this coffee restaurant. And he pretended to fix the lights, and doing so, he put them off. And then we sneaked behind the building silently to two pickup cars with open trunk in the back. We were 18 people stuffed in our car. I couldn't even sit. I hold the handle above my head, above me, and hanged like that all the trip, all the way, which was about 30 or 45 minutes. We drove with no lights. From far away, we could see lights following us of other cars. And this was really frightening. We thought that maybe the Ba'ath were following us. We reached a dark and deserted top of a hill. There, we were told to wait to be picked up. We got off the cars. So we were told to wait there to be picked up by other, that we will be to be picked up by other Kurdish cars. We waited there, standing completely silently in that darkness under the stars. It was a deserted place. It was very cold. My father carried my sister covered with a blanket. The baby of the other family started to cry. My sister said she dropped her shoe and she was hushed right away. We were very terrified. We did not know whether someone will really come for us, or maybe we will be caught by the Amen, by the Mukhabarat or the security police, or maybe be a good meal for the beast in the mountains. About 20 to 30 minutes passed until two cars came for us. We drove for another hour or so in the darkness and reached a shack. We went down, not knowing what will happen. There were few Kurdish people who wrote down our names. We were offered hot tea and realized that we can calm down a little. We were in a Kurdish territory of Mullah Mustafa Barazani. Later, we learned that our names were sent from there to Israel. Now we were taken in cars to cross the border. My aunt and I sat in the front seat, and the others in the back. Our Kurdish driver was fair, slightly red hair. He was in a good mood and talked with us, but we were too nervous and suspicious. He said, well, in a few minutes, we will cross the border to Iran and leave the Iraqi territory. You can change your mind. Do you want me to turn back? For a second, we were terrified. His good humor was a very bad joke for us. He laughed and said that he was joking, and I think it was Masoud Barazani. We crossed the border without any problems. At last, we left Iraq, reached Iranian territory. We drove to the border town Khana and were taken to a small inn, a very filthy one, like Nazar described before, but it was for us the best hotel in the world. It was after 1 o'clock a.m. It took us, our trip lasted for about 5 hours. We woke up early in the next morning, ate a light breakfast, and the bus waited for us to take us to Tehran. So it was really unbelievable feeling of freedom. We reached Tehran, Hotel Sinai, at 9 p.m. It was Tuesday, 3 days after 2 days, actually. There we couldn't believe our eyes, a little Baghdad, with a lot of our friends who disappeared suddenly from Baghdad a few days ago. They waited for us in the entrance to see who are the lucky ones who succeeded to escape this time. So we were thankful for our clean and luxurious room, nothing like the inn in Khana. We met David Fatal and learned that our names were sent to our families in Israel, that they already know that we reached Tehran. My grandparents called us from Israel, and the excitement was really immense. It was like a miracle. They talked with my mother. My mother talked with her sister that who left in the Tasqit in 20 years ago, 20 years earlier in the Tasqit.
Okay, Lily, thank you very much. We already, by the way, thank you all the participants. Thank you for all the people who stayed with us. We got to 2 hours, believe it or not, although I wasted a bit of time when I spoke twice. But as you can see, even Lily, which is supposedly the easy route, it was not that easy. Believe it or not, I think we still have 195 people listening. And I think at some peak, it was over 260. So, you know, if anybody would like to stay with us, I'm happy to keep it open. And if anyone want to ask questions, please do via the chat, and we will answer them. If
So
not,
in the meanwhile, I just wanted to say, because I mentioned Tisha B'Av, it was Tisha B'Av 2,600 years after the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple that we made the opposite way and came back to Eretz Israel.
thank you. If anybody would like to stay, I want to show you something. If you have the time, I'm going to share a screen and I show you a couple of short videos if you are happy to do that. Just a second. Can you see the screens here?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
This is about the smugglers in Hajj Umran.
Can you have a full screen?
This is Ali Gali Beg. This is the terrain of Hajj Umran. It's under zero. Minus 10 degrees centigrade. These are the smugglers. From Kurdistan, crossing the mountains to the other side from Iraq to Iran. This is Iraq, Iran. This is Hajj Umran. These are smugglers smuggling anything. They're actually smuggling fuels from Iran. So you can see the mules or horses. Okay. So I will show you another one. This is winter conditions in Sulaimania. This is what you crossed at night. Nazar, all the people who crossed Sulaimania. And this is probably 50 years hence with a good road. This is a wide road. I think it's definitely the main road to between Slemania and Penguin. But I'm sure 50 years ago it was much narrower road and much worse condition. But it gives you a feel about what you did not see in the daytime. Okay, this is the area where Joyce actually walked. She may not have seen light, but I want to show you. Okay. So it's not straight flat. Somewhere it's a flat, somewhere are very, very, I'm sure she didn't, Joyce did not walk here, but this is the terrain, which is we calling it desert. These are the maybe al-khanadiq or the hiding trenches that you hide in them. Okay, that's it, guys. I'll go back into non-sharing, stop share. Okay, anyone would like to make comments or talk? If not, then thank you very much. It was an enjoyable. I hope you enjoyed it. I pay tribute to all these people who had the courage really to go into the dark just to try to get out from Lisette. Okay. Just a second, Lisette want to talk and it's impossible for her not to talk anyway.
Finish.
Okay.
Well, I tell you, and I went through Arbil Darban, and up to now, I'm grateful I did it that way. It was the easy way, but Joyce's was very scary. And when you say it in Arabic, Joyce, it's even scarier. Anyway, thank you very much, everyone. It was fascinating. But Khedher, what you did now, you showed us the terrain, I think encapsulates the whole story for everyone. It's very important. If you do this again, I would show the terrain before the stories, because it really drives home.
Yeah.
Like the people who in winter, like Elsie at the time and Edwina, they all didn't have boots and they had to go in the snow and be on that mule for hours in the cold. If I do it now in Canada with my Canadian clothes, I freeze. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisette. Anyone would like to say anything?
I would like to call on all our friends or people who escaped to write down their stories and, to have this evidence. Very important.
Okay. Thank you. Good night or good evening. Those in still